I've made over 100,000 cold calls and generated over 1,000 meetings from those calls. That's resulted in over $10 million in pipeline created. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what's been working for me, the fundamentals, how to start booking sales calls right off the bat, the stuff that works in any niche, whoever it is that you're calling. Most people, they think that cold calling is really hard, it doesn't work anymore. It's neither. It's actually quite simple. Most people mess up because they start off wrong. It's the fastest way there is to book meetings, even in an age of AI, even what people say about emails, and the fastest way to start making money. Whether you have an audience, a brand or not, you can start calling today, book meetings today, and start making sales. So what I've done is I've broken it down into 3 parts. Between them, you'll have every fundamental you need to start calling and actually get results from it. And part 1 is typically the part that every single person skips. So what nobody wants to talk about is the list building. Everyone wants to talk about the script, perfecting it, making sure that you sound good on the phones. And honestly, that's kind of the fun part of sales. No one wants to get into the nitty-gritty of what actually makes it so that the calls are effective and generate results. And that's what I've seen to be the #1 separator between great cold callers and mediocre. It's not how great they are on the phones. Now that does matter. If you're selling water to a market that has no water and is in a drought, people are gonna buy. It's the same with a product. If you have a product that people need and you're selling it, you're gonna be able to sell, but it's all about making sure you're talking to the right people. And so a good list, it's not just gonna get you more meetings, it's gonna change exactly how you sound on the phone. You're gonna be more confident, it's gonna resonate. You're actually going to be able to have conversations with these individuals. So the first thing you wanna do whenever you're building a list is you wanna get specific on your ICP. So the ICP is gonna be the industry you're calling and then the title of those individuals. Now, I actually just worked with a friend on this. He was getting into the HVAC market, and the #1 thing that we had to figure out was who are the people who are actually going to benefit from his services, and then we broke it out from there. So you can use any structure that you want. I personally really like Apollo for list building. I've tried other ones. I haven't been impressed. Apollo.io, it's by far the cheapest. You're gonna spend less than $100 a month. You're gonna be able to pull thousands of leads for that. It's all about getting that list right. So the things you have to identify the industry. So who are you calling into? Now, if you have a SaaS product and it's for manufacturing, you know you're going to be calling manufacturing companies. If you're an HVAC company and you're selling to property managers or retail businesses, you're going to build a list of retail businesses. And I will be working on have another video out going over how to do this step by step, but that's what you need base level. And then on top of that, you need the ICP of the individual, the contact level. So you have the account level, that's the company, and the ICP of the individual is the specific contact that you're going to call. And so what I like to do is I like to try to identify who's going to be buying this specific product. Who is it that I need to reach at the company? So what it would look like is you're going to build your company list and then your prospect list. So let's say that I'm working specifically with property managers and I'm trying to build a list of that. That's the job title that I'm going to be going after. And a lot of companies, they miss this step and they just call everyone and anyone at a company and they waste a lot of time doing it. Now, there is value early on if you don't know your ICP, so who the person is that's actually going to be buying. ICP means ideal client profile. Then you can do some testing. You can test with operations, finance, compliance, whoever it might be, and see who it resonates with. But after about 10, 20 conversations, you'll have an idea of this is the person to talk to, this is who's going to find value, and you can kind of break it down from there. A couple other things you can build out on are based on revenue, the team structure, tools they use, where they're based, whatever they actually filter on. If you're not national and you're only selling in a specific area, it actually makes it super easy to target. It actually will make the script a lot easier as well. And then you're gonna wanna use just a tool to build it out. So the tool I like the most, again, is Apollo. But if you're local, it's a tool called Gmaps Extractor, and that will just pull all the Google Maps search results for local businesses. So if you're going national, you can go Apollo, you can do Gmaps Extractor if you're trying to go local, but those are two really good ones, super cost effective, super simple to do, and you'll be able to pull the information as well. I will say one of the things I avoid, especially early on, is trying to get way too granular. If you know without a doubt who it is you should be calling on, then yeah, you can get super granular. But a lot of times at one company, it might be operations who handles whatever it is that you're solving for, and then finance might solve it at a different company. And so you do have to keep in mind there's often multiple ICPs that you're going to call, multiple people. And so So you want to make sure you're reaching the right people. The final thing you can do with list building is you can go signal based. And so that's essentially tracking based on a company's signals if now is a good time for you to call. Now, some of the signals I like to use, and I've worked with companies who specifically will work with a specific software. They'll only work on Oracle, for instance. If they'll only work on Oracle, then what I'll do is I'll put into my filters, their current technology stack is Oracle. Whatever it might be, you can build signal based. And that's the biggest thing with list building. You just want to make sure that you know who it is you're trying to call. You build the list. You can use something like Apollo. That's my favorite. For a dialer, you can simply use your own phone or Google Voice. If you want to really get into it, you can use a tool I like to use. It's called Trellis.ai. That's a power dialer, which will essentially automatically dial for you. So if you want more meetings booked and you'd rather someone else did the calling for you, that's what my company does, SDR Mastery. We build the list, we validate it, we make the calls, we do all the testing, we figure out your ICP if you don't know it already, and the meetings land on your calendar. Qualified pipeline. Some of the clients that we've worked with, in 3 months of working with them, they generated over $50,000 in closed won revenue and $500,000 in pipeline. So click the link in the description to book a call. We can talk about your situation and how we can help. Part 2 of cold calling and what I've learned from making 100,000 cold calls is the script. The script is incredibly valuable and incredibly useful, especially early on. A lot of people, the problem is though, they spend too much time overthinking it and writing it out and not actually saying it. It's actually the number one issue that I see, and it makes me laugh every single time that I read a script a company has. They'll ask AI or they'll type it out and they don't actually say it out loud. Now, I'm a huge proponent of AI. I would actually recommend you start building your script by telling whatever you want, Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, whoever it is, hey, here's who I'm targeting, build me a good call script for this. It's a great baseline. The problem is a lot of people don't read it out loud. And so when they actually say it on a phone call, it sounds salesy, it sounds robotic. It doesn't sound natural. And so just make sure as you're going through the script, editing it, making sure it actually aligns with what it is that you want to be saying, you say it out loud. And then from the script, the one rule that I always has is the only point of a cold call is to book a meeting. It's not to sell them on the phone. It's not to do anything else. Some companies, they have BANT where you need the budget, authority, need, and timing, where essentially the company, the prospect you're calling, they have to have the budget for it. They have to be the decision maker. That's authority. They have to have the need, which essentially they don't have that need being met well. And then they have to have the timing, so the right timing. Now, a lot of times if they do quarterly financing, the timing might just be off. I'm typically not too worried about that. My goal with a cold call is to book a meeting and then to have the salesperson, whether that's you or someone else, to actually dive into it. I think a lot of people, they'll overqualify on the initial call, thinking, okay, I want to make sure this person is the perfect fit. Just qualify the 1 or 2 core things that you need. And so for me, when I'm cold calling for SDR Mastery, my own business, what I do is I tell them the baseline price starts at X. Would that make sense for you if we could deliver results? If they say no, I know they're not a fit. If they say yes, perfect. And then for the demo, that's actually when you would dive into the specifics. What I've found is the shorter the call, the better the conversations, especially when you've gotten really specific. And so what I want to focus on, especially when I'm cold calling, is that I don't sound like a salesperson. I'm just having a conversation. I'm telling them the value prop of what we do. We can get to the point of a yes or a no very quickly. And a lot of people miss this with the script. The goal is to have a conversation with someone about where they're currently at to see if this is a fit or not. Now, my goal with a cold call is to book a meeting, but it's also to qualify the prospect I'm calling to see if they're the right fit or not. And so you want to identify early on if they're the right person to be speaking to. And if not, then you want to go for a referral. And the final thing I would say for the script, especially on the top end, what a lot of people miss is they won't have an ask for a meeting and they won't have a loop. Now, a loop is super simple. Let's say someone says, hey, send me an email. What I do is I lean into every objection and then I ask again for the meeting. You can ask up to 3 to 5 times for a meeting in a single call, and this is what a lot of people miss. So let's say someone said, hey, send me an email. We might be interested. I'll say, yeah, I'm happy to send over an email. What exactly are you looking for in that email? And they'll tell me, oh, I don't know. We need to see if you guys can connect to our current system, whatever it might be. And I'll make that the reason for the calling. Oh, perfect. That's actually why I'd called. I figured it might not all make sense. Typically what we'll do is we'll just sit down for 20 minutes, show you what we do. We can see if it makes sense that way and dive into the specifics. I know a lot of emails get lost. Would this Thursday or Friday work for you to meet? You can see I just looped it around and I asked again. A lot of people, they only ask once, and that's their biggest issue. You can do the same if someone says, I don't have time right now. Yeah, no worries. Honestly, I figured you were super busy, Mr. Johnson. The reason that I gave a ring was actually to see if maybe sometime next week, Tuesday or Wednesday, if 2 or 3 Eastern would work for you, we could meet then. Does that work? Again, just looping it back, asking for the meeting. That's where a lot of people drop the ball. They'll only ask once. The other thing that goes into a script I think a lot of people miss is the goal is to have a conversation. And a lot of people, especially when they're getting started, they'll read off the script, which is perfect. What I recommend to new people who haven't done any cold calling is to have a script, stick to it for a week, 2, maybe a month if you feel really uncomfortable with cold calling. After that, start to make it your own. I've worked at 3 different sales organizations. I've worked with over 20 companies now doing this. I'll stick to the script for the first week or 2, and then once I'm comfortable with it, I'll make it my own. So I'll make it sound more conversational. I'll make it how I would normally talk. There's a lot of advice out there on how to open a cold call. You have the mission-based opener, you have the casual opener, you have the direct opener. Hey, this is a cold call. Permission-based would be, do you mind if I grab 27 seconds, let you know why I'm calling? Casual, how's it going today? I know we haven't talked before. Something simple like that. Whatever flows for you is what's going to make the biggest impact. That's the piece that most people miss when they're cold calling. The script is great, use it to learn the product, the value prop, the offer, all of that. But what you want to do once you feel comfortable with it is make it your own. People can tell if you're salesy or not. They can tell if you're being natural or not. And so on those cold calls, make sure that you're tailoring it to yourself once you feel comfortable with the product and the offer that you have. The other thing with a script is a lot of people will get an objection. They'll say, okay, they'll hang up, and then they won't make a note of that objection. What I did when I first started cold calling is I made a list of all the objections I got that were common. So not interested, no budget, no time, send me an email, whatever it might be, I would write it down. And then I would craft a response to that specific objection. If you're getting objections and you're getting hit over the head with them repeatedly, it means there's something that you need to fix in your script or you need a way to handle it. It's the same with not interested. A lot of people think that's the killer. It is if you don't have a response. So if someone says not interested, you can say, hey, totally get you're not interested. If this is right off the bat, I haven't even told you why I called. Can I at least tell you why I called and you can let me know if you're interested or not? At least you have something. They're still gonna hang up half the time after they say not interested, but you have to give yourself a chance. And it's the same with the other objections. 10 to 20% of those, if you have a response, will turn into a meeting. 0% of those are going to turn into a meeting if you don't have a response. And that's what a lot of people miss. And so the goal is have a conversation so you can keep talking, figure out where they are, know how to handle the objections, build it out, and then have an ask for it. And those are the biggest things with the script. Now, that's the list and the script. And I've seen people get both of those completely right, and still nothing is gotten out of this because they don't do it consistently. And that's part 3. And this is the part where most people fall off. People can build a list. It's very easy, very simple, especially with the tools out there. You can build a list in 30 minutes, less if you really want to. Building a script, you can do that in 30 minutes to 2 hours, especially with AI, and I recommend you lean on it. You can build a script. The consistency part is where most people fall off. I spoke to a company about 2 months ago, and they came to me and asked me for help. They said they weren't booking any meetings, they weren't getting any good results. So I asked them, okay, tell me a little bit about your numbers, your data, your backing. What are you looking at currently? They'd made about 50 calls, they'd booked 3 meetings, and they'd had 7 conversations. So a conversation is where you connect and get through the pitch. That's how I would qualify a conversation. So of their cold calls, they were booking about 6%. which is very high. 1% is considered good, 2% would be very good from a cold calling perspective. Their connect rate was about 14%, which is again, very good for the industry. 14%, anywhere between 7 to 10% would be considered good. Anything below 6%, you probably have to do some validation on your side, assuming you haven't called them 10 different times. And so what I told them is your problem is your volume. It's not that you need more callers. It's not that it's not working. You're calling these people, you're booking the meetings. And then I asked, how many times are you calling every lead? They were calling them once. So they called all these leads once. This is so common, and a lot of people don't understand this about cold calling. You have to call a prospect anywhere between 5 to 9 times before they'll answer the phone. Now, the caveat to that is your first and your second dial, you have the highest chance of someone picking up. You'll probably have some wrong numbers. You'll probably have some leads who never answer, but you have to call at least 5 to 7 times. I have spoken to people 2 weeks after my first call. I've spoken to people 2 months after my first call. They were on vacation. They'd had a death in the family. They had a medical emergency. They switched their numbers. It can be any number of things. And so this is the piece that I think so many people miss. They think, oh, when someone cold calls, they call someone once, maybe twice. And then if you're a very hard worker, maybe you're calling 3 times. I call every prospect a minimum of 5 times, ideally 7 times. And so this is the part of consistency that people miss. If I have a lead list of 100 contacts, that's 500 dials that I need to make. And so if my goal every single day is 100 dials, the question is whether or not I stick to it or not. And it can get really frustrating. And this happened to me a lot early on until I started to dig into the data, and I'll get into that shortly. And I would stay consistent with my outreach for an entire week, and I would see no results, no meetings booked. The next week, I might drop off, or vice versa. I'd call for 1 week, I had really good results, booked a ton of meetings, and then I'd drop off the next week. What happens is the consistency is where the results come from. And so whenever I would have a great week and then the next week I would slack off and then the next week I would keep calling and do really good work and stay consistent, that week would be bad. If I had a bad week, but I stayed consistent, the next week was always far better because you're building on everything. So if I'm making calls and for that entire week I book no meetings, but I have 50 conversations with different prospects and 10 of those are interested or activated leads is what I'd call them. They're interested, they want more info. The next week I'm gonna follow up with those. I'm gonna book meetings with some of them. And that's where the results really come into play. And what a lot of people do is they'll make calls for a week, maybe 2, and they'll say, I got no results, nothing came of this. It can take 2 to 3 months before you actually build solid, consistent pipeline to understand the results that you're gonna get. And this is so key for people to understand. And I think this is the biggest reason that people fail with cold calling. They don't stay consistent. For some of the clients that I work with, I'm booking meetings now with people I spoke to 6 months ago. Maybe their budgeting cycle came up. Maybe they switched jobs and they think this would be more relevant. Maybe they know when their current contract with their provider is up and they say, hey, call us back then. That's when we're going to be taking bids. I've seen all of that. And so these results build on themselves. And so you should expect your worst results in your first few weeks of cold calling. But you have to stay consistent to make the next 3 weeks the best weeks of cold calling. And this is where too many people drop the ball. A lot of people that have a bad week and they'll say, okay, this doesn't work. You have to do it for another week. At a minimum, I would recommend you stay consistent, making 100 dials a day for 4 weeks before you know if something's gonna work or not. And if you see some results, some meetings booked from that, it means your second month is probably gonna be better as long as you're keeping track of the people who wanna follow up. And you can do that super simply. What I did, especially in my first SDR roles, I wasn't a huge fan of how follow-up tasks were built out in Salesforce, HubSpot, you name it. I would put a little reminder on my calendar. John Smith asked for a call back on this date. And then I'd put a link or their number in there to call them back. And that's how I would keep track of the follow-ups. That's where most revenue and most success is found for reps. And that's how they build up on it. They keep track of who's interested and they keep doing the work consistently. This is pretty much where all the money is made. And this is where most reps fail. They drop off on consistency because they have a bad week or a bad month, but everything builds on itself. So the results I get today are a result of the work I did last week or 6 months ago, whatever it might be. It's the exact same with building a brand. I started posting consistently on LinkedIn. I'm starting on YouTube now. I might not see results for 6 months. But now I'm having people reach out who say, I've been following you for 3 months, 6 months, and I'm interested in what you're working on. It's the same with cold calling. I see this with all of my clients. I keep track of that. And if you stay consistent, you start to see results. This is the number one problem with cold calling. People think the grass is greener on the other side. It's easier to sell another product. It never is. It's just about showing up, doing the work, and staying consistent with it. It's the game of discipline. Doing what you say you're going to do each and every day. And so what I did is, for the data that I mentioned before, I dove into the specific numbers that backed everything that I'd done to date for 6 months. And what I found is 1% of my calls converted to a meeting. My average connect rate was about 9%. So if I made 100 calls, I'd talk to 9 people, I'd book 1 meeting. Some months it fluctuated. Sometimes I would book 0.7%, sometimes I would book 2%. Really good, really bad. But that was the average. And so what I realized is if I made 100 calls every day, I would average 1 meeting a day. Now, what's interesting is I could make 100 calls for 3 days straight with no meetings. And then the 4th day I book 4 meetings. And that is the piece that if you can recognize that in your brain and say, okay, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do the work today, even if I get no results, that's where the money's made. That's where the meetings are made, and that's how you do it. So if you started calling tomorrow morning, here's what it should look like. You've got a list built the night before, the day of, whatever it is. Use Apollo, you can scrape Google, whatever you want. Have all those numbers in a list though. Everyone on it genuinely has the problem that you're looking to solve, or they're the right ICP, and you can actually reach out to them. So make sure you have their phone number and then give them a reason that you're calling them. So build out the script based on the reasoning that you have to call. So you've got a script. It could be from AI, whatever it is. The real thing is just stay consistent, make the calls. You'll figure out the script, tweak it as you go. Make sure you don't sound like a salesperson. Get comfortable with it. Say it out loud, even the opener. Hey, this is Daniel. How's it going? Hey, this is Daniel. Do you mind if I grab half a minute? Sure, while I'm reaching out. You can let me know if it's relevant or not. Hey, this is Daniel. This is a cold call. Do you mind if I grab 27 seconds, let you know why I'm calling? You can let me know if it's relevant or not. Whatever it is, practice it, rehearse it. It will sound better when you do it. And then make sure you slow down. I do this now, even when I'm recording. I have a habit of speaking very quickly. And so I have to remind myself constantly on calls to slow down. Slow down, it sounds more natural. If you're rushed, your prospect will match that energy. And so you've got your list, you've got your script, you've got the consistency, you've got the number of calls you need to make. Do it for a few weeks, see the results you have. If it doesn't work, you need to tweak something and change something. It's not that complicated though. It's not hard. It's not hard to do it either. What it is, it's hard to stay consistent. And if you'd rather not do any of it, if you want more meetings and you want someone else making the calls, links in the description. If you want to book a call and talk about it, I can tell you more about the work we've done with other clients, how we can help you book more meetings, get more pipeline. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.